There is a moment, usually around 3 in the morning, when the mind stops pretending. There are no more commitments to disguise the exhaustion, no more people to impress, no more plausible excuses. It is just you, the ceiling, and the question that insists on returning. Why, despite so much effort, so much study, and so much reading about mindset and prosperity, does life remain practically the same? It was exactly this kind of question that decades ago led an Israeli engineer named Itzhak Bentov to abandon easy answers and seek something more concrete, something that could be measured, observed, almost drawn like a circuit. Bentov was no guru. He did not wear exotic clothing, he did not speak in vague mystical symbols, and he did not promise miracles overnight. He was a scientist, an inventor of medical devices, a man accustomed to thinking in terms of frequency, resonance, and synchronization. And it was precisely this technical perspective that led him to a discovery that few have known how to apply correctly to this day: that the mind and body are not two separate systems that occasionally communicate, but rather a single oscillatory system, where the heart, the brain, and the nervous system function as instruments that must come into tune for any real change to occur. Think for a moment of an orchestra tuning its instruments before a concert. Each musician adjusts their string, their breath, their percussion, until all the sounds, previously dissonant, begin to meet in the same vibration. Only then can the music be born with beauty. Bentov saw the human being in a similar way. He investigated altered states of consciousness, not as spiritual phenomena disconnected from physical reality, but as measurable physiological states, moments in which the heart, by beating in a more regular and coherent way, begins to directly influence brain waves, which in turn alter the tone of the autonomic nervous system. In other words, when the heart finds a stable and serene rhythm, the brain follows, and the entire body enters a state he called physiological coherence. And it is precisely within this coherence, not outside of it, that human perception expands. A person begins to see possibilities that were previously hidden behind constant mental noise, background anxiety, and the tension we carry without noticing throughout the entire day. This is the first point that must be clear before any technique. It is not willpower that generates change. It is not intense desire. It is not the mechanical repetition of positive phrases. It is not willpower trying to push reality to a different place. What generates change, according to this perspective, is internal coherence, this subtle and silent state in which the heart, brain, and nervous system cease to be in conflict and begin to vibrate together, like that tuned orchestra. And this is exactly where many people get lost. They try to change their lives from the conscious mind, writing down goals, visualizing achievements, repeating affirmations in front of the mirror, without realizing that there is a deeper, older, more powerful layer that continues to dictate the course of things beneath all this conscious effort. This layer is the subconscious, and understanding how it really works is the second step of this journey. For a long time, the subconscious was treated as a simple archive of memories, a repository of old recollections, forgotten traumas, and experiences stored in some corner of the mind. But this description, while not completely wrong, is incomplete. The subconscious actually functions as a field of frequencies, a vibrational system composed of emotional patterns and beliefs that were recorded throughout life, often before you could even form complete sentences. Each striking experience, each intense emotion, each belief repeated with enough frequency leaves a kind of vibrational signature in this system. And most importantly, these signatures remain active. They continue to vibrate, even when you are not consciously thinking about them. It is like a radio left on in the background, playing a specific station, while your conscious mind is occupied with other things, work, bills, the conversations of the day. You are not listening to the radio on purpose, but it is there, shaping the soundscape, shaping the background tone of your existence. Now imagine that this internal radio station plays most of the time a melody of scarcity, of fear, of I am not enough, of good things don't happen to me. You may consciously desire wealth, love, health, recognition. You may even visualize this in vivid detail every morning. But if the subconscious continues playing that old melody, the two systems enter into conflict. And when there is conflict between the conscious desire and the vibrational pattern of the subconscious, the one that almost always wins is the subconscious, because it operates automatically, continuously, without needing effort, while the conscious mind gets tired, gets distracted, loses focus after a few minutes. This is why so many people feel like they do everything right, and yet nothing changes. They are trying to reprogram the conscious software, while the background operating system, the subconscious, continues to run the same old commands, blocking any change that is in direct contradiction with what it considers true about you and the world. It was precisely while trying to resolve this impasse that Bentov reached a conclusion that many consider the centerpiece of all his work. There is a specific neurological window, an interval of time in which it becomes possible to access and reorganize these vibrational patterns of the subconscious, and this window, according to him, revolves around 3 minutes. It is not a number chosen by chance or for aesthetic convenience. Bentov is said to have identified that real internal change depends, above all else, on the creation of an adequate physiological state, and that this state takes, on average, that amount of time to establish itself consistently in the body. Conscious intention, by itself, performed from a tense body with short breath, with a nervous system on alert, simply cannot cross the barrier that separates the conscious mind from the subconscious. It is like trying to record a new song onto a tape that is still playing the old song at high volume. The new sound blends into the noise and is lost. The first few minutes of any attempt to change state are usually turbulent. The body, accustomed to operating at a certain level of tension, initially resists any invitation to deep relaxation. Thoughts arise, worries knock at the door, the mind insists on returning to the to-do list, to the conversation that was left unresolved, to the financial worry that never fully leaves the head. This is exactly why most people give up before completing the process. They feel this initial noise and conclude erroneously that they are not managing to relax or that meditation is not for them. But this initial noise is just the first layer, the tense surface that needs to be crossed before the true state of coherence begins to set in. After approximately 3 minutes of correct practice, the heart finds a more stable rhythm, brain waves begin to slow down, the parasympathetic nervous system, responsible for rest and regeneration, takes control, and it is exactly at this point that the door to the subconscious truly opens. Before that, you are knocking on the door. After that, you enter the room. We arrive then at the technique itself, and it is important that you follow each step with attention, because the order and quality of each minute matter more than the mechanical repetition of words. The first minute has a single goal: to interrupt the accumulated physical tension and signal to the body that there is no imminent danger. You begin by relaxing your gaze. This may seem like a small detail, but the eyes, when tense, focused, and alert, keep the entire nervous system in a state of vigilance, as if they were constantly scanning the environment for threats. By softening your gaze, by allowing it to become more diffuse, less focused on a specific point, you already send a subtle signal of safety to the brain. Next, release your jaw. Most people carry enormous tension in this area without realizing it, clenching their teeth throughout the entire day as an unconscious response to stress. Let your mouth hang slightly open without any effort and feel your jaw go slack. Then, release your shoulders, letting them drop, away from your ears, freeing the weight we often carry there as if we were holding the entire world upon them. With your body already beginning to yield this initial tension, direct your attention straight to the heart region. There is no need to imagine anything complex. Just place the focus of your mind there, in the center of your chest, as if you could physically feel the presence of this organ that has been beating steadily since before you were born. And then, regulate your breathing, prioritizing an exhale longer than the inhale. Breathe in naturally, without forcing, and then let the air out slowly, prolonging this outward movement, as if you were emptying not only your lungs, but also any residue of tension still present in the body. This specific breathing technique, with the elongated exhale, directly activates the parasympathetic nervous system through the vagus nerve, reducing the heart rate and signaling to the brain that it is safe to relax deeply. Repeat this breathing pattern throughout this first minute. Relax the gaze, release the jaw, free the shoulders. Attention on the heart, breathing with an exit longer than the entry. By the end of this first minute, your body is no longer the same tense body that began the process. It has started to prepare, silently, for what comes next. The second minute is where most people make the most common mistake of all reality-shifting practices. They try to visualize. They close their eyes and attempt to construct detailed mental images of the new car, the dream house, the ideal relationship, the full bank account. And although visualization has its value in other contexts within this specific technique, it is, in fact, an obstacle. This is because pure mental visualization still operates mainly in the cortical region of the brain, in the more rational and analytical part, the one that continues to compare the desired image with current reality, often silently generating a sense of distance, of "this is not mine yet," of effort to believe in something the mind still recognizes as fantasy. The subconscious, remember, is not convinced by elaborate images. It is convinced by sensation. Therefore, in the second minute, the correct path is to completely abandon the attempt to visualize and migrate totally to the field of bodily sensation. This means that instead of trying to see the scene of what you desire, you must search within your own memory for a real moment in your life when you felt deep gratitude, genuine relief, or absolute certainty about something. It could be the relief of receiving good news after a period of worry. It could be the gratitude felt beside someone you love in a simple and true moment. It could be the quiet certainty you felt upon finishing something important, knowing, without a shadow of a doubt, that you had given your best. What matters is not reliving the visual details of this memory, but rather reactivating the exact bodily sensation it produced. Where in your body did you feel that relief? Was it in your chest, which seemed to open up? Was it in your shoulders, which relaxed all at once? Was it a generalized lightness, as if a weight had been lifted from your back? Find that specific physical sensation and allow it to spread through your body again, as if it were happening right now, in this very moment, and not just being remembered. This is the true bridge to the subconscious, not the image but the embodied emotion. The subconscious does not clearly distinguish between an experience lived intensely in memory and an experience lived in the present, because both produce in the body practically the same set of physical sensations, the same patterns of muscle tension and relaxation, the same subtle variations in breathing and heart rate. By physically reactivating gratitude, relief, or certainty, you are, in practice, sending the subconscious a vibrational signature very similar to one it would recognize if the desired outcome had, in fact, already happened. You are not faking it. You are reconnecting with a real capacity that already exists within you, simply directing it toward a new context. The third minute is where everything solidifies. After having established physiological coherence in the first minute and activated the embodied emotional sensation in the second, the moment arrives to present the intention not as a distant wish, but as a reality already present. Here the internal language shifts in a subtle but decisive way. Instead of thinking, "I want this to happen," or "I hope this comes true," the mind and body begin to operate from a different place, a place of, "This is already so. I am already this person. I am already living this reality." It is not about convincing the rational mind through arguments or verbal repetitions, because, as has already been said, the subconscious does not respond to logical arguments. It responds to the prevailing internal state. And it is precisely this internal state, sustained by the physiological coherence of the first minute and the real emotional sensation of the second, that becomes, in the third minute, more important than the content of the desire itself. This means that how you feel during these 3 minutes matters much more than the specific details of what you wish to achieve. Two people may want exactly the same thing, a new professional opportunity, for example. But if one of them practices these 3 minutes from a genuine state of coherence, embodied gratitude and present certainty, while the other just mentally repeats, "I will get this job," from a tense body and an anxious mind, the results over time tend to be completely different. Not because one person deserves more than the other, but because, literally, They are sending distinct vibrational signals to the same subconscious system that organizes perceptions, automatic decisions, and, consequently, opportunities recognized or ignored throughout the day. And here we arrive at a point that, honestly, is the most neglected of this entire practice, and also the main reason why so many people perform the technique correctly, feel its effects during the 3 minutes, and yet do not see real changes in their lives after weeks or months of trying. The error is not in the technique itself. The error is in what happens right after it. The person finishes the 3 minutes, feels that good sensation of lightness, of coherence, almost of renewed hope, and then, minutes later, rushes back to their old patterns. They open their phone and see bad news. They remember an overdue bill. They receive a message from someone that triggers old insecurity. And, without realizing it, they dive back into the fear, the doubt, the sense of scarcity they were trying to leave behind. In a few minutes, the state carefully built during the practice is completely undone, and the subconscious, always attentive to the pattern that repeats with the most frequency and intensity throughout. Throughout the day, simply ignores those 3 isolated minutes and continues operating from the old pattern, which still dominates the remaining 23 hours and 57 minutes. Think of it this way. 3 minutes of coherence, however powerful they may be, represent a tiny fraction of your day. If, right afterward, you spend hours fueling thoughts of lack, comparison, urgency, and fear, it is as if you had carefully planted a seed and then let it be buried by a storm of old dense soil, compacted by years of repetition. The seed does not disappear, but it cannot grow amid so much contrary pressure. That is why the core message of this part of the journey is not about doing 3 more minutes, nor about repeating the technique 10 times a day in the hope of forcing the result. The message is about maintaining, even if more subtly, the new internal state throughout the day, through small conscious choices that are aligned with that feeling of coherence you built during the practice. This does not mean living in denial, ignoring real problems, or pretending that everything is perfect when it clearly is not. It means developing the capacity to notice when you are sliding back into the old pattern and, in that moment, consciously choosing a small action that reinforces the new state, instead of simply accepting the emotional autopilot. It could be a longer breath in the middle of a stressful moment. It could be remembering for a few seconds that feeling of gratitude you reactivated in the morning. It could be choosing a kinder word to yourself in the face of a mistake, instead of the automatic self-criticism that would normally arise. It could be simply realizing that you are about to enter a spiral of worry and, consciously, returning your attention to the present, to the body, to the breath. None of these choices seem dramatic in isolation, but it is precisely these small moments, added up throughout the day, that determine whether the old pattern continues to dominate, or if the new pattern, still fragile at the beginning, begins to gain space and strength. And it is precisely this repetition, day after day, that leads us to the final point of this journey, the one that Bentov considered the true goal behind the entire technique, the consolidation of a new, dominant internal frequency. The human nervous system, much like a muscle, strengthens through repetition. At first, maintaining the state of coherence for 3 minutes may require considerable conscious effort because the old pattern, reinforced by years, perhaps decades of repetition, is still the easiest neural path to follow, the one of least resistance. But each time you return to this state of coherence, each time you choose, even if just for a few seconds, to reinforce the new sensation instead of automatically giving in to fear or doubt, you are literally strengthening a new neural pathway, making it gradually more accessible, more automatic, and more natural than it was before. Over time, and here it is important to have realistic patience, because we are not talking about instant magic, but about a genuine process of internal reorganization, this new pattern of coherence begins to become the dominant pattern, not just during the 3 minutes of practice, but throughout more and more moments of your day. You realize that you react differently to situations that would previously have completely destabilized your emotions. You realize that you can maintain calm in contexts that would previously have generated immediate panic. You realize that small good things begin to happen more frequently, not because the universe has started to conspire in your favor in a magical way disconnected from any explanation, but because, on a much more practical and observable level, a person who operates from internal coherence makes different decisions, perceives opportunities that previously went unnoticed behind the noise of anxiety, communicates differently with others, and consequently attracts different reactions and results than those typically generated by a state of constant tension. The narrative behind this discovery by Itzhak Bentov leads us then to a simple yet profoundly powerful conclusion. Lasting external changes do not arise from isolated efforts of will, nor from visualizations disconnected from the actual sensation of the body, nor from mechanical repetitions of positive phrases, spoken without any physiological coherence behind them. External changes arise almost inevitably when there is first a stable, sustained internal shift, free of contradictions between what one consciously desires and what one deeply believes at a subconscious level. And this stability is not born from a single moment of inspiration, but from the consistent practice, day after day, of those 3 minutes that reorganize the physiology, reconnect the correct emotional sensation, and gradually retrain the entire nervous system to operate from a new pattern, a new background tone, a new frequency that begins to silently define everything you perceive, decide, and, eventually, live. Perhaps the most interesting part of this entire discovery is realizing that it does not ask you to believe blindly in anything. It does not require absolute faith in abstract concepts, nor grandiose promises of instant wealth. It asks only for 3 minutes. 3 minutes in which you soften your gaze, relax your jaw, release your shoulders, place your attention on your heart, and prolong your exhalation. 3 minutes in which you abandon the attempt to visualize and begin to reactivate within your own body a real sensation of gratitude, relief, or certainty. 3 minutes in which you allow this sensation to become more present, more real than the simple, distant wish for something to happen one day. And, after that, the silent invitation to carry, even if subtly, this new state throughout the rest of the day, through small choices that sustain rather than sabotage what was built during the practice. There is no guarantee that your entire life will change overnight after a single session. That would be too simplistic to describe a process that involves real neurological reorganization, the reconstruction of old emotional patterns, and the gradual development of a new relationship between the conscious and subconscious mind. But there is indeed a concrete and observable possibility that by practicing these 3 minutes with genuine attention, day after day, sustaining this new state through small choices throughout the following hours, something begins to change consistently. Perhaps not tomorrow, perhaps not next week. But sooner or later, the difference between the person who insists on trying to change only from the conscious mind, forcing positive thoughts onto a subconscious that continues to vibrate at a different frequency, and the person who learns to directly access this deeper layer through body-mind coherence, this precise combination of physiological relaxation, embodied emotional sensation, and silent presence. That difference becomes, over time, impossible to ignore. And it is exactly this difference, sustained minute after minute, day after day, that Itzhak Bentov seemed to be pointing to when he spoke about the true architecture behind any real change of reality.